So please take a seat. And next, may I kindly invite Most Venerable Vice Director once again to kindly open today's special lecture series. Most Venerable Sir.
Humbly pay homage to the Triple Gem, the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. My college, Assistant Professor Dr. Sanu, the PhD Program Director, and Assistant Professor Dr. Joanna Gruszewska, the Center for Comparative Study of the Civilization, Faculty of Philosophy, Jagiellonian University, Poland. And good morning to all of you, my dear brothers and sisters in the Dhamma. Welcome to the academic seminar. Not particularly to the Buddhist study program, but for all program provided by the IBSC. The topics today, the theme today, Buddhism and modern science, integrative repetition on the Tipiṭaka. Before I'm going to focus on that, first I would like to inform you due to the Most Venerable Director IBSC not available to be here. I am being here on behalf of him to open the seminar. So as previously I mentioned the theme of the seminar today, Buddhism and modern science. This is one subject provided to study for MA and PhD programs in Buddhist studies. Relative integrative reflection on the Tipiṭaka. You know, this theme I have considered and adjust once to be approved as the theme of the seminar today. All right, the Buddhism and modern science integrative reflection on the Tipiṭaka. When talk about Buddhism and modern science, there is one word that I kept in my mind so far, now still remember very good. The words of the great scientists. The great scientists, actually I have mentioned in the class for BA and PhD program before this word. I don't know all of you remember or not. The words of the famous scientist that share his idea concerning Buddhism. Did you remember? My MA PhD program already returned this word, this knowledge to me, right? That verse is, if there is any religion in this world that cope with the modern scientific need, it would be Buddhism. So this is the wonderful word that shared by Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein have left this word for the Buddhists or for all people in this world to consider that only the teaching in Buddhism can meet the scientific study. So in the Tipiṭaka, many teaching that mention and then can challenge to the scientific inquiry. Many, for example, anicca, impermanence, nama-rupa, my body processes, meditation, samadhi, right, mindfulness, all of these very famous learned in the Western country, particularly to the mindfulness. Meditation, samadhi, this word, not mentioned in Buddhism at first, but it mentioned in other Orthodox before the Buddha got enlightened. Do you know, right? The Rusi or ascetics have practiced the meditation before the Buddha got enlightened. So this is not the Buddha teaching, but the Buddha applied the meditation or samadhi to Buddhism, how to practice the meditation successfully. This have mentioned in other belief before. The Buddha applied to the Buddhism. Only meditation concerning insight or insight meditation. This mentioned in the Buddhism only or taught by the Buddha only, not appear in other Orthodox or other religions. So all of these can meet or related to the scientific study. It's very important. As you are the listener, what you get from the seminar today, not only attend or participate in the seminar only. There are a lot of knowledge, insightful understanding all of you will gain. In Buddhism, it's mentioned about the benefits of listenings. How many benefits? 5 benefits of listening. How to listen to gain insightful understanding or insightful knowledge. What they are? The first one, I mentioned in the Pali first, okay? Asutang sunati. Hear the thing you never heard, the thing you never learned before. Asutang sunati. The second one, sutang. Pariyotapedi. Understand what you ever heard, you ever learned more clearly. The second benefit, kangkang vihanati. What is it? Resolve doubts or elevate doubts. The next one, titing uchung karoti. Correct your understanding. Yes, of course, the previous day, may you understand by yourself. But after listening the lecture today, you may understand clear, you have the right understanding. And the last one, chittamassa visitati. Your mind clear, your mind impure. If you focus on or concentrate on the lecture or the panelist panel discussion today, you will have many knowledge happen to your mind, and you can adopt all of this to practice in your daily life. This very important thing. Finally, I do hope that this academic seminar bring the benefits, insightful knowledge to my dear brother and sister in the Dhamma, my MA PhD program, and may this academic seminar successful in every respects. Thank you.
Sadhu. Thank you very much, Assistant Professor Dr. Pramahanantakorn Piyapani, to preside over and opening today's special lecture ceremony. Next, without further ado, may I kindly invite Ajahn Assistant Professor Dr. Joanna Gruszewska to please proceed on the stage. And before we do that, let me briefly introduce her to all of our audiences. So she's an assistant professor at the Center of Comparative Studies of Civilisations, Faculty of Philosophy at the Jagiellonian University in Krakow, Poland. And her academic work explores the role of women in early Buddhism, especially as portrayed in Pali Canon and its commentaries. And her today's highlight for her talk will be as follows. She'll be talking on explores portrayals of women in Pali Buddhist literature, drawing and canonical texts and commentarial traditions. Eminent Buddhist Nuns, Tipiṭaka, voices representations and literary conventions. Laywomen as patrons, disciples, and exemplars, from canonical texts to commentaries, a critical look at female figures in the Pali tradition, and reflections on their significance in Buddhist thought and modern sciences. So without further ado, may I kindly invite Ajahn Joanna to please take the seat and share her knowledge. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much for the introduction. Thank you so much for inviting me to give this lecture. So, Venerable Vice Director, Venerable Sirs, Professors, colleagues, students, I'm very happy to share my research. So I will talk mostly about texts that I'm mostly specialized in researching. So I mostly most of my early career was devoted to the study of the Therigatha, but recently I also try to explore the role of laywomen in the Tipiṭaka, and also in the commentarial literature, especially in the Dhammapada Atthakatha. So most of the examples I will draw today will come from the Therigatha and Dhammapada Atthakatha, and some other parts of the Pali Canon. Okay.
Hello.
Okay, thank you so much. So I made like a small subtitle to my main title, because I will try to put this analysis of the text from Tipiṭaka and commentarial literature into some framework of looking at those characters, those female characters that engage in rational inquiry and thinking that could be considered proto-scientific thinking. Because of course in the Tipiṭaka we cannot really have like 100% scientific inquiry, because it was, and at those times there was no specific technology available to us in modern times. But I argue that we can find already some elements of proto-scientific thinking, and many of the ideas mentioned also by Venerable Professor are already present in the very early Buddhist thought. And those ideas, I think, and I argue, can be connected to the modern experimental, the modern scientific inquiry. So the goals of my presentation are as follows. So I would like first to explore the portrayals of women we can find in Pali Buddhist literature and in the commentarial literature. And I chose specifically, like my method is to look at the characters that could be considered as engaging in either rational inquiry or philosophical debates. So I would like to look at those characters, what they talk about, how they perform, and sometimes some characters are depicted in the canonical literature, but also then commentarial literature expands on their biographies and comments about their achievements. So I take into account also the commentarial depictions of the same characters. And so the main goal of my presentation would be like to provide some critical overview of the textual construction and reception of those very diverse female figures, female characters that are present in the Pali tradition. And I would like to explore also the aspect of their significance for Buddhist thought and practice. So there had been a lot of research made on the significance of the Therigatha, but I think the significance of some lay female practitioners that are depicted in Pali literature had not been researched enough yet. So I would also like to stress, to emphasize their significance. And lastly, at the very end of my presentation, I would like to take a look at the examples I presented and try to reflect whether and this rationalist inquiry, this rationalist argumentation could be aligned with modern sciences, modern scientific thinking, and maybe reflect a little bit about the integration of such ideas with modern sciences. So how the portrayals of women and the rational inquiry, this proto-scientific thinking they represent in the Tipiṭaka could be somehow inspiration, or could be integrated with some concepts that are present in modern scientific thinking. So the very plan of my presentation is, as it was already mentioned. So I will talk about first about eminent Buddhist nuns, and then in the second part I turn to laywomen. I would rather, there are many characters that are very interesting, and I believe I could talk much longer that I'm ought to. So I tried to concentrate on either the examples that I find most interesting, or like most striking, most representative. So for the Therigatha, I will talk about poems of Theri Soma, Theri Punna, and I will talk a little bit about Kisa Gotami, but also Kisa Gotami I will take into account her commentarial story from the commentary of the Therigatha, from the commentary to the Dhammapada and to Anguttara Nikaya. And in the second part, I would like to focus on such examples of laywomen. So I will talk about Visakha, Kujuttara, and I should have added one more here. Two examples from the Dhammapada Atthakatha, basically the story of the weaver's daughter and the story of Matika Mata. Also very interesting examples that have not been researched yet much, especially in the Western academic circles. And but before I go into the analysis of the examples I chose for today, I would like also to maybe repeat a little bit what is mostly considered as Buddhist concepts that are especially compatible with modern scientific thinking. So I chose the concepts that are most often repeated by scholars and that are used by Western scholars as an argument of like very specific position of Buddhism as a religion that is very much connected with modern scientific thinking, as Venerable Vice Director quoted Albert Einstein. So also following this line of argumentation. So there are some concepts that are present in early Buddhism, that are present in the Tipiṭaka, and also lack of presence of some concepts makes also Buddhist thought very much aligned with modern scientific thinking. So the Tipiṭaka lacks the concept of God creator, which is of course like one of the main obstacles for Christian religions to completely align with modern scientific thinking, or like for Christian theologies to align with modern scientific thinking. But also the very methods that are used in scientific inquiry, especially in modern research, are already present and are already very much valued in the Tipiṭaka, and are already advocated by the Buddha. So, for example, such method is the postulate of direct observation of phenomena. It could be natural phenomena or the phenomena of the mind. And another aspect, another method that would align very, very well with modern scientific thinking is the focus on experience. So the experimental attitude is also very much present in the Tipiṭaka. Many of the scholars who research, who do research in biological sciences, in life sciences, and are inspired by Buddhism, mention that the paticca-samuppada, dependent origination, is a concept that very much aligns with many of the scientific methods from life sciences. But also, if we take just the idea of the cause and effect, it will be applicable even to broader scientific world. And also already mentioned factor of impermanence, the constant change that is part of the three characteristics. So like the very basis, the very core of the Buddhist doctrine. So the constant change, impermanence, also is something that has been proven by modern scientists. And also, maybe not in the same way, but not directly, but the concept of anatta, the concept of no self, is also a very useful point of departure for thinking about psychology, thinking about the mind within like the modern framework of scientific thinking. So we've got many concepts, we've got many aspects, we even have some kind of proto-scientific methods already present in the Tipiṭaka, and many characters, the Buddha himself, but also his disciples will present the teachings that would involve those concepts, or they would examine different phenomena by direct observation, and they would focus on their experience of those phenomena. So we've got multiple examples, but for my focus for today are women, and it's also, I think, it proves that if we can find many examples with female characters, both monastic and lay women, it proves that the Buddhist thought, the Buddhist teaching was trying to convey the message of equality, and that those concepts are universal and available to anyone who will be, of course, trained in a proper way. So it seems like that the universal concepts, universality of these concepts, I think also aligns with the modern scientific thinking. And like still before I go to analyze the examples I chose, I would also want to devote a few minutes to reflect on the role of women in the Buddhist literature, in the Buddha's life. So we've got many important female characters that occur in different texts and that occur in the stories about the Buddha's life. So of course, the mother of the Buddha, Mahamaya, is one of the most venerated female characters. And even she doesn't have like any episode connected to scientific thinking. We need to mention that the Buddhist tradition also describes one of the rain retreats of the Buddha as his stay in the Tavatimsa heaven, where he teaches his mother the Abhidhamma. So like the most sophisticated knowledge we can find in the Tipiṭaka. So even the mother of the Buddha, to some extent, engages in the teachings and gains the insight from his teaching. There were many female lay followers who would support the Buddha on different stages of his life. And of course, one of the most venerated is Sujata, who gave the Buddha this particular meal when he, just before he went on his final part of the quest for the awakening. But also many other lay followers were gaining a lot from his teaching, and they would acquire a lot of merit by supporting the Buddha and the monastic community. So we also need to remember that many of the women, even though they might not be described as engaging in any philosophical debate or scientific inquiry, were very much important to sustain the others who were engaged in such scientific, proto-scientific debate, proto-scientific questioning. So also their role here was very important. So they were those who have done much, those who could be in Pali term, the Bahupakara. So both, for example, Sujata, but also Mahapajapati Gautami, the Buddha's stepmother, were those who have done a lot to help him to achieve his final goal and to enable humanity, like to gain the knowledge. Here we've got a sculpture from the Gandhara school, of Gandhara style, depicting the return of the Buddha to Kapilavatthu and Yasodhara, who also became an eminent Buddhist nun later, and who also became very learned. So even though maybe she doesn't have like many episodes of in the Tipiṭaka, she's featured in the Apadana. She's also in the Apadana. She's considered a very learned and a Teri who achieved the final nibbana. And of course, most of the examples of eminent Buddhist women would be the Buddhist nuns, the first direct female disciples of the Buddha. So here I chose illustrations. So on my right, there is a sculpture also from Gandhara style that is now in the Milan Archaeological Museum. Probably it depicts the Teri Upalavanna, also like a very learned, very accomplished Teri. And the other illustration is a fragment of the mural from Wat Po in Bangkok that is supposed to depict the conversation between Mahapajapati Gautami and Ananda. So the establishment of the monastic order of nuns also opened some new possibilities for women to study, to engage in philosophical inquiry, to engage in rational inquiry. And if we take into account the cultural and historical context of the beginnings of Buddhism, we will find that in Brahmanism, women could not really study, and women were prohibited from devoting their life to the religious goal. So both Buddhism and Jainism establishing the orders of monastics for women opened also not only the path for women to gain enlightenment, to gain monastic training, but also to gain the possibility to engage in philosophical debate. So many of the characters I will mention will come from the monastic background and from especially from the Therigata. So the Buddhist community at the times of the Buddha consisted of the four assemblies, and in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta we've got fragments. When there's the fragment when the Buddha speaks to Mara, and he mentions that all the four assemblies are already well trained and able to regain the knowledge they possess and to further teach others. So we've got many fragments in the Tipiṭaka mentioning that also women can be very learned, and both nuns and lay women. So in the context of ancient India, that was very unique, that was very revolutionary, and to some extent it seems even controversial to open the monastic path for women. But it was a great achievement, a great step for women, also in terms of intellectual achievements. So now I turn to my examples. So I would like to start with examples from the Therigatha. So here also, like the background of the slide is a fragment of the mural from Wat Po in Bangkok. In Wat Po there are several murals depicting eminent disciples of the Buddha, and there are several murals also depicting eminent Buddhist nuns. So this is the fragment, I believe, of the mural dedicated to the Theri Dhammadinna. And the quote I have on my slide is from probably nowadays most popular Western book on the Therigatha by Canadian scholar Catherine Blackstone. And she argues that the Therigatha is a very unique text. It's not only a unique text in terms of the Tipiṭaka, the Buddhist tradition, but also if we look at other world religions, also the Therigatha would be like a very, very unique achievement, because this is basically the only text that comes from pre-modern times that is attributed to female authorship, and it's at the same time part of the recognized canonical collection. And also the focus, the topic of the Therigatha poems is also very important. So it focuses exclusively on women's religious experiences. So Buddhism was really a pioneering religion in terms of commemorating the achievements of female disciples, and not only commemorating but also praising their achievements, and it conveys this message of the equality we can find in many fragments of the Tipiṭaka. So in other world religions, especially from that era, we do not have such situation. So this is something not only unique in terms of the Tipiṭaka, but also like in terms of every world religion of that era. And this text is very interesting because it could be read by many scholars coming from different perspectives, different methodologies. So the Therigatha would of course be very interesting to research for those who study Tipiṭaka, but also researchers who engage in research on ancient India, the social roles of women, but also like the social society in ancient India. For historians, it's very interesting, and nowadays also for the scholars of gender studies, especially for those who try to produce research in the comparative mode. Those poems can be compared to depictions of women from other religious texts of other other religions. So this is a very interesting text, and in Western scholarship, it's very much, there has been a lot of research on the Therigatha, and also my PhD was oriented on the analysis of the depiction of monastic community and religious experience of women in this text. So in terms of place in the Tipiṭaka, Therigatha situates itself within the Khuddaka Nikaya and is situated next to the Theragatha, the poems that are attributed to renowned Buddhist monks. So we've got separate collections for monks and nuns. So it's also some sign of early Buddhist tradition having like the gender as category, as delineating category. So this is also very interesting. So my first example is a poem by Theri Soma, found in the Therigatha. But also Theri Soma features in some other texts and also in commentarial literature. And there is also her story, some kind of like hagiographical story in Sanskrit text called Avadana Shataka. So like the 100 stories, the 100 Avadanas. And I will focus mostly on the versions from the Tipiṭaka. So we've got very short gatha, very short poem attributed to Theri Soma, and also in the Bhikkhuni Samyutta part of the Samyutta Nikaya, we've got 10 short suttas where Theris are in dialogue with Mara, and they prove that they have that they have defeated Mara, and one of those suttas is also attributed to Soma. So basically, the Samyutta Nikaya repeats and the verses from the Therigatha, but adds a little bit more, adds a very interesting concluding part. So in terms of Theri Soma, when we study Avadana Shataka, when we study like more developed portrayals of her in later times, it seems that the Buddhist tradition was viewing Theri Soma as a very learned daughter of a Brahmin, and someone who would learn also the Brahmanical knowledge, especially in the Avadana Shataka. She's described as someone who would only hear what her father, a very learned Brahmin, would teach his male students. So she did not really have an access to education, but she was able to overhear the teaching. And later she was considered to be very learned and engaging in philosophical debates. And ultimately she meets Sariputta, and he defeats her in the debate, and then she becomes a Buddhist nun who is also very learned, and she achieves the final achievement. But of course, in the Tipiṭaka, her biography is not so elaborate, but it seems maybe like this idea that she was very learned was also present already, to some extent at least. So it is a very famous quote, because Soma says that being a woman is not an obstacle in gaining insight and in profiting from the Buddha's teaching. So like the framework of this poem and the framework of the construction of the Bhikkhuni Samyutta in the Samyutta Nikaya is always as such. So Mara comes and challenges a nun, and he would refer to some stereotype about women. So in case of Soma, it is the stereotype that women are stupid. And it must have been a stereotype in Brahmanical society. And we can see that it's one of the examples where characters from the Tipiṭaka actually have a lot of agency and engage with, challenging this stereotype. So she challenges Mara, and she proves by her words that this assumption, this stereotype is basically not true. So as she says, what does womanhood matter when the mind is well concentrated, when knowledge proceeds on for one who correctly sees into the Dhamma? So there is a proof that everyone, even a woman, even in this ancient society that prohibited women from engagement in education, from engagement in religious life, were able to gain the knowledge. And the second part, which is not present in the Therigatha but is present in the Samyutta Nikaya version, is also very striking. So basically, Theri Soma says to Mara that, basing on this stereotype that there is some essence of womanhood or essence of manhood, following those stereotypes is something that that Mara would say. So I believe we can interpret this as a message that if we follow such stereotypes, we are in the realm of Mara. So any stereotypes, negative stereotypes based on gender, seem to be refuted here. And this is a very early text, so a very great achievement of early Buddhist text in terms of presenting the vision of equality, also even gender equality, even if probably in ancient times it wasn't so much of a concern as, for example, for modern world. And next example I would like to present is probably my favorite example from the Therigatha. I think during one of the classes with students I already mentioned this poem, but I think it's very unique and very interesting. So also in the Therigatha, one of some longer poems, this is a poem that in total contains 16 verses, we encounter a character of Theripunna. So it seems that when in the poem she's not a Theri, she's still a laywoman, and she's a laywoman coming from a very low background. So she's basically a servant or even a slave. And her duty is to bring water from the river, from the stream. And when she comes to the stream to draw water, she encounters an older Brahmin who is doing his ritual ablutions. And they start a conversation. And during this conversation, Punna actually challenges his ideas, his metaphysical ideas coming from Brahmanic worldview, and teaches him. And in the end, he becomes the follower of the Buddha. So basically, it is a character of a woman coming from a very low background. She is not learned, but she's already the follower of the Buddha, and she understands his teaching. And she's able to engage in some kind of a debate. Maybe it's not a very sophisticated philosophical debate, but it already has some characteristics of such a debate. So the most interesting fragments I present on the slides. So as I said, the premise is that she comes to the stream, and the Brahmin is performing his ablutions. It's very early in the morning, and we can learn from the poem that it's very cold. So Punna is trembling because of the cold, and also the Brahmin who is immersed in the stream is also trembling. But she makes some kind of a metaphor, some kind of simile here. So she claims that he's trembling from fear, and he's trembling from fear of the punishment for what he had done. And she suggests that, and then she asks him a question like, why would you do such thing as this ablution? So it's a little bit like a rhetorical question, but the Brahmin comes with an answer. And like he would say something like, you very well know what I'm doing, but okay, I will repeat it. So I'm trying to clean off the evil karma I acquired. And this is the answer for his explanation. So like a very blunt answer, but she will like rebut his metaphysical claims, his worldview. So from the point of view of the Buddhist doctrine, of course, such ritual does not make sense, does not have any soteriological value. It would have sense probably for some circles of Brahmins, but of course we are dealing now with a Buddhist text. So this is a great opportunity, didactic opportunity to present the Buddhist view on such practice. So maybe even to some extent, Punna uses some kind of satire, some humor. I think we could even find something like this here. But she would go into like a very rational arguments. So she says, like, if your conviction would be true, if this idea that that the water can clean off the bad karma would be true, then all of the water animals would be already enlightened. And she would mention examples like frogs, turtles, serpents, crocodiles, and anything else that lives in the water. So even I think we can go so far to say that maybe she would like even pointing out to some of the animals that were nearby. So we could even think maybe it was for like some kind of direct observation suggestion. And then she follows like a little bit more distant argument. So she mentions that all the people who would engage in professions that would produce evil karma also would be able to be set free from this evil karma if they would do ablutions. So she's probably here referring to this idea of ritual purity in Brahmanism, and in Brahmanism such professions would be especially impure. So she like tries to convey some rational arguments, and she tries to like show the Brahmin that his claims are not true, at least from the point of the core of the Buddhist doctrine. But she goes even further. So she does not only say that his behavior is not rational from this point of view, but also she goes even further. So she says, like, by this logical argumentation, if the river carries off the evil karma, then the good karma could also be carried off. And then the Brahmin would be, in Pali there's a term paribahiro, so he would be completely left out, completely like cast off. So he would be, I think we could interpret that he would be like no one. And of course, from a Brahmanical point of view, the Brahmins believed that every person has some kind of unchanging essence, so that every person has Atman, and so like a very opposite view to Buddhism. So this argument probably, I think, is quite skillful argument. So it would really resonate with his Brahmanical education. And as a good teacher, she already, after showing him the method, after she shows him some actionable steps. So she says that if you fear of your your kamma, if you like have basically any fear, you should not do the thing you are doing. You should not go down to the water for ablutions, but you should take refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. And the Brahmin immediately converts. He praises Punna for teaching him, and he says that he's now on the right path, and before he was on the wrong path. And the final words in the poem is the declaration of Brahmin of gaining Tavidya. And what is very interesting, like he also uses a lot of terms that in Brahmanism would have a different sense, that would be connected to education. And in Buddhism, they are reinterpreted into terms that would be characteristics of arhathood. So he says, for example, that he is an Hataka, so in Sanskrit, Snataka. So as you probably all know, when a Brahmin, when basically any man from the first three classes, first three varnas of the ancient Indian society would finish his education as a student of the Vedas, like the marking of this end would be a ritual bath. So after that, he would be called Snataka, the one who had taken this ritual bath. And so when he says, he uses this word Hataka in Pali version, like he actually says that only now when he had been taught by Punna, he completed his education. And he also uses the term Tavidya, so like the term for arhathood, but in the Brahmanical realm, it would mean someone who had learned the three Vedas, so 3 of the 4 Vedas, so someone also very learned. So this is a very interesting poem because Punna gives those rational arguments, and the effect is basically immediate. Like the Brahmin sees like lack of rational thinking in his practices, and he immediately converts. And he also praises Punnika for her teaching. So I think in this example is one of the most elaborate examples that could be referred to as rational argumentation, direct experience, and connection with proto-scientific thinking, so to say. And quite interesting, I think, is also the framework, because in every philosophical text of ancient India, like to present something, you need to have an opponent. So I think it could be interpreted as a very much a didactic text, not only like a song of triumph of the Teri that had achieved awakening. And also I would like to draw your attention to one feature. So we've got a very similar sutta, the Sundarika Bharadvaja Sutta in the Majjhima Nikaya, when very similar arguments are presented by the Buddha. But of course, the sutra is much more elaborate and much more sophisticated. But also a Brahmin asks about if there is any merit in ritual ablutions, and the Buddha presents a very similar arguments. He also mentions water animals. And at the end, the Brahmin converts and praises the Buddha for his teaching, and praises him for showing him how the things really are, because his previous view was wrong before the teaching. So I think there is some kind of variant on this teaching, on this sutta, on this motive of ablution present in the Therigatha as well. And some kind of a link between the Therigatha and the Dhammapada Atthakatha stories would be the story of Kisa Gautami. So in the commentary to the verse 114, we learn about the biography of Kisa Gautami, because in the Therigatha, her poem is quite short, and she mentions sufferings that are only experienced by women, and she mentions losing a child as one of those immense sufferings that, especially for women, that would be like the greatest suffering of women. And this story is elaborated in the commentarial literature. So from the Therigatha, we only have those fragments on the sufferings of women and like this mentioning of the death of children, of the death of the close ones. But commentarial literature makes a narrative, and this narrative is, I think, very interesting, and it's also very popular. So from my upbringing, I was raised as Catholic, but this would be like the first Buddhist story I would encounter because of some Japanese TV series I've seen on TV when I was a child. So one of the characters was telling the other character the story about the mustard seed. So it's a very popular story, very many times retold, and also we can see that present in popular culture. I also heard that there had been some versions in Sri Lanka TV and film series that were drawn from the stories of Patachara and Kisa Gotami in recent years. So the story of the mustard seed, this most popular story, is not present in the Therigatha per se. Maybe it's like a little bit suggested, but this quest for mustard seed is basically the commentarial, present in the commentarial version. And as I mentioned, there are 3 commentaries that mention this story with some little variants. There are some small changes sometimes. So we've got the commentary to the Therigatha, the commentary to Anguttara Nikaya, and also to Dhammapada verse 114. So here I took illustration of the Vesak stamp that was depicting the character of Kisa Gotami. And this one is also from Wat Po temple mural. So the story of Kisa Gotami is some kind of a bridge between the Therigatha and the other examples I will tell you about in a moment. So in this story, like the very scientific aspect of this story, of this proto-scientific aspect of the mustard seed quest, is present in the moment when Kisa Gotami is not yet a Buddhist nun, but she is a laywoman. So the story, as you probably already know, because it's like, as I said, probably one of the best known stories, Buddhist stories in the world, when her little child accidentally dies, she tries to find the cure for the child. And at some point she's directed to the Buddha. And the Buddha, in a very skillful manner, teaches her. So he does not give her teaching, but he gives her a task. So she's supposed to find a mustard seed, to bring a mustard seed from a home when no one had died. And so this is like a task, like a research task, we could say. And Kisa Gotami embarks on this quest. And at some point, she realizes that there is no such place as a home where no one had died. So, by direct experience, she really realizes the 3 characteristics, and she gains insight. So it would prompt her to get ordained, and after she gets ordained, she practices more, and she achieves also arhathood. So I think in this story we can find this proto-empirical reasoning, and basically this quest could be interpreted as testing the hypothesis through practice. So like her hypothesis, which was wrong, was that there could be a cure for her child. And she is basically testing this. And she is at some point, from experience, from the evidence, she draws conclusion that her hypothesis was wrong. And then she realizes the Buddha's teaching. So the Buddha here is also depicted as a very skillful teacher, as a very skillful teacher who would direct her, but she would basically learn this truth by herself. So this is, I think, very interesting example that could be aligned with this empirical thinking. And I would like to also mention some lay women. So, as I said, Kisa Gotami character, when she has this quest for mustard seed, she is still a lay woman, and later she becomes an accomplished Buddhist nun. So this example is like a little bit in between those two categories. And now I turn to lay women, and mostly I will draw my examples from Dhammapada Atthakatha. So I would like to mention Visakha, so the most important female lay disciple, the most generous sponsor of the Sangha. And even though maybe she does not engage in like formal philosophical debates in the text that she features, she is always depicted as a woman of great wisdom. And she would be a listener to many of the Buddha's teachings. And she would also be described as that she understood those teachings and that she had applied them in her daily life. But of course, she is a laywoman. She would not convert and become, she would not become a nun, but she would apply the teachings in her lay life. So, but I think we could also observe that when Visakha is described, she's also described as a person that applies reasoning and evaluation in her doings. So basically, when she tries to help the Sangha, when she tries to give support to the Sangha, like she evaluates what does the Sangha need. And we even have mentions in some fragments of the Dhammapada Atthakatha that if someone wants to give a proper gift to the Sangha, one would consult Visakha and also Anathapindika, because they know the best what does the Sangha need. So she would be a woman of great wisdom, but also like a very practical person. And this practical aspect, I think, could also be interpreted as this applied reasoning, evaluation, systematic observation, because by careful observation and like rational thinking, she is able to help in the best way. So she was very highly competent in organizing this support, basically because of applying systematic observation, reasoning, and critical evaluation. So some other examples of eminent lay women that would be using this rational thinking or argumentation, or would be using the evaluation, I think could be the weaver's daughter. So Pesakara Dhita Vathu is the commentary to the verse 174. And here we have a very unique character where a very young girl, so there's mentioned that when she first hears Buddha teaching, she is 16. And in the conclusion of the story, she is 19. So she, after hearing the Buddha's teaching in her town of Alavi, she would master the meditation the mindfulness of death meditation, Maranasati meditation, and she would gain insight. But in the story in the Dhammapada Atthakatha begins when the Buddha evaluates like who needs his help at this very day, and he sees that she is able to achieve Sotapanna, but also that she will also die this day. So he comes to give her the final teaching. And there's a very interesting part of this story where she comes to the Buddha, and other people from Alavi are also present, and the Buddha gives her 4 questions. And like the premise is that she was quite late for this meeting. She wouldn't be able like to go to meet the Buddha because her father, the weaver, wanted her to bring him some materials for to his workshop. So like she basically meets the Buddha on the way to her father's workshop, and he gives her questions, and she would answer, but she would answer in such a way that the citizens of Alavi would say that like her answers do not make sense. So for example, the Buddha asks her like, where do you come from? Where are you coming from? And she says that she does not know. And the citizens of Alavi are like, but she should say that she is coming from her home to the weaver's workshop. Or like, what's wrong with her reasoning? But the Buddha says that she actually answered in a proper way, because on a symbolic level, he was asking like about her previous life. And she says that she does not know her previous life. And like maybe I will cut a little bit short this analysis and just say that most of those questions are concerned with samsara and death. So basically, the weaver's daughter says that like she for sure knows that she will die, but she does not know what was her previous life and what is her next life. And after the teaching, she achieves Sotapanna, and she tragically dies at the end of the story. But she's also like a very, she's also depicted as a very young person, uneducated, that is able to achieve insight and is able to engage in something that could be, I think, considered religious philosophical debate. Also, what is very important, she proves her efficacy in contemplative practice. So it seems that this contemplative practice also enables her critical thinking and analytical reasoning. And of course, this is more theological framework rather than scientific framework, but I think some of the proto-scientific aspects could be also found here. And the other person, the other female lay follower who is featured in Dhammapada Atthakatha, that is also have mastered meditation, is Matika Mata. So it's a woman, we do not know her name, who is the mother of the village chief, and the village name is Matika. So she would support a group of monks, and she would be taught by the group of monks about the meditation, because she once meets the monks and she is quite surprised that they come from different places. So like she thinks that maybe they have quarreled, and monks explained to her that they were engaged in meditative practice. So that's why they were meditating, in different places. So she asks them like, but is it only for monks, this kind of meditation you practice, or is it open for everyone? And they say that it is actually available to everyone, and they teach her about the meditation on the 32 parts of the body. And she is like very efficient in this meditation practice, and she gains insight, even faster than the monks that were teaching her. So also, like, she is able to engage in some critical thinking, observation, but then with directed, skillfully, she proves her efficacy for the of her contemplative practice. And I think the last character I would like to mention is Kujuttara. So another lay woman who would be considered very learned. And here I would base my conclusions on the commentary to the Tipiṭaka, but also Kujuttara features in the story of the Queen Samavati in the Dhammapada commentary. So Kujuttara is also a woman coming from like a very low social position. She is a servant or even a slave for the Queen Samavati. But after hearing the teaching of the Buddha, she gains the insight. She is able to remember the teachings and to give those teachings to the women of the palace. So she would be mentioned in Anguttara Nikaya as the first among the lay women who have heard much. So she is mentioned as a very learned character. And in one of the suttas of the Udana, it is proven that because of her teaching, the palace women, the 500 palace women, attained at least the first stage of the path. So she not only was able to remember the suttas, but also to teach them in a very efficient way. So I will slowly come to some conclusions of my lecture. So I chose only some examples. As I said, those examples which I think are the most interesting, which I think are the most striking. And of course, those examples differed between each other. Some were presenting more elaborate elements of debate. Some were just only mentioning some aspects of scientific thinking. But I think those examples prove that in the Tipiṭaka we can find women engaging in this rational inquiry, proto-scientific thinking, proto-scientific debate quite often. And this teaching would be presented in a very specific manner. So I think in the most of the examples, we could observe that there is some kind of dialogical frame. And in my interpretation, I think that when the dialogical frame is present, it also suggests that those texts or those characters or those elements that are presented in this framework of dialogue or debate are thought to be didactic elements. So we have many of those stories, many of those teachings are presented in a didactic framework. So we can see that some of the characters were accomplished disciples, but also some of the characters I mentioned were the teachers themselves later. So it proves that in the Tipiṭaka we've got characters of women who are depicted as efficient teachers, as accomplished, also on the intellectual, not only spiritual level. And those accomplishments would be praised. Many times they would be even praised by the Buddha. So, for example, the weaver's daughter would be praised by the Buddha, and this accomplishment would be directly acknowledged and praised. In many of those stories, if not in all of those examples I chose, we can observe that the characters gain insight through direct experience, through observation, through some or either through some systematic inquiry. So those are, I think, fundamental aspects of modern scientific thinking as well. The cause and effect observation, testing the hypothesis. So especially in the mustard seed quest, I think we could observe that the wrong hypothesis has been proven to be wrong because of the process of evaluation, and this evaluation came from the direct experience of the character. Many of the characters, and I think it was very much visible in the example of Punna, many of the female characters would not only gain insight and would be able like to engage in critical examination, to engage in critical thinking, but also they would gain skills in teaching and debate. So they would be able like to not only repeat what they have learned, but also like make it actionable. So the conversion of Brahmin in the Punna's verses, I think, proves that also like they would be the critical reasoning, the understanding of the deep understanding of the teaching would be also present in those female characters. And as I mentioned, some of the characters seem to be coming from backgrounds, at least that's how commentarial literature would depict them, coming from some well-established backgrounds. So it seems that Somateri, at least in this version of Avadana Shataka, had some access to what was at that time probably like the most sophisticated education. But many of the characters I mentioned were coming from a very low background. So the weaver's daughter, Kujuttara, Matikamata, I think as well, were coming from low backgrounds, and it seems that it was not an obstacle for them to gain insight, to gain knowledge, to gain skills in critical thinking. So I think that also proves that the Buddhist teaching is universal, and if we take into account this context of ancient India, we've got a different ideas of gender equality in modern times, but it seems that I think in the times where those texts emerged, like the Brahmanical stereotype was that the women are not able to gain any education. Women would not be able to engage in critical thinking and debate. So if such characters feature in the Tipiṭaka, and especially if there are women from low backgrounds that are able to achieve such critical thinking and critical examination, this is the message of the early Buddhism, that everyone is able to achieve this. So, as I said, today we've got a different ideas of equality, but in ancient India, I think the stereotype mentioned in Somateri poem was very widespread. So Tipiṭaka counters this. Those examples counter this idea that women are not able to reach some kind of intellectual level of reasoning, observation, and debate. And so this is, I think, very unique in terms of the early Buddhist teaching, that basically everyone, if properly trained and with proper efforts, can gain insight, can profit from the Buddha's teaching. So, like my very last words for this lecture. Like now, I would like to weave in like my one of my first arguments. So, as I mentioned, I will try to I wanted to prove by those examples that in the Tipiṭaka, we can find some elements that could be compatible with modern sciences, so that there is some integration with modern science. And as I said, like in the Buddha's time, there was no advanced technology. So we think about modern scientific thinking maybe in a different way than in the times of the Buddha. But still, the very ideas of reasoning, argumentative reasoning, rational reasoning, this value of experience, value of direct observation, and rejecting the metaphysical speculation, for the direct observation, and this testing of hypothesis, analytical reasoning are very much present in the Tipiṭaka, and those are very much the fundament of scientific thinking, and also even modern scientific thinking, even though maybe the technology is of course much more advanced and there are different research questions than in the ancient times. But the hypothesis testing will be, there will be many analogies. So I think this is all I wanted to present today. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm looking forward to your comments and questions, and I'm very happy that I could share my knowledge with you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Assistant Professor Dr. Joanna Gruszewska, for sharing wonderful insight about women in Pali literature, eminent Buddhist nun and lay women with modern sciences. I think today we've heard enough insight that she shared about women, especially women. It's very hard in IBSC to find someone who has expertise about women in Buddhist literature. So she has shared enough of them. Next, we will be having a small open Q&A session. So if anyone has any questions related to what she shared us today, or even in the previous classes that she has been sharing knowledge to our MA and PhD students, you can please raise your hands and ask questions. Yeah. Well, let's start by Ajahn Sanu first. Yeah.
Okay, Professor Joanna Gruszewska, thank you very much for your very wonderful lectures. Okay, I appreciate so much, especially on how you select the very prominent lay devotees. Okay, well, actually, I have no questions, but to share some idea that I have in my mind. Well, one thing that I would like to say is that I strongly agree on your main concept is that there is no inequality, right? There should be some equality and no discrimination in terms of attaining to the nibbana, because nibbana is the universal state that should be that should not belong to just some group of people, especially the men or something like that. Okay. That is why I so much appreciate on the Soma theory. Okay, when you mentioned about the Soma, mentioned about the discussion between her and the Mara, right? I think this is very interesting dialogues between the two people. Okay, can I say people? Because Mara, it's actually not the human beings, right? But the Soma. Okay, before this reply, because this is the reply given by the Soma theory, but before this, there was very interesting, discriminated and looking down words given by the Mara. The Mara said before this that Arahat state very challenging. It's just only for the sakes, it's only for the sakes to attain with her 2-inch wisdom. 2-inch wisdom is mean the very low in wisdom, right? So the lady cannot attain to that nibbana. I think this is very strong word when someone is being, talk with someone who have a very low in the wisdom. Of course, Mara, in every single part, in every single activities, always with less wisdom, right? The Buddha spoke to the Mara with, Mara, you are so less in wisdom. So how can Mara understand, universal fact or universal thing is that between men and women, there is no discrimination, and this is the part that I strongly, agree on your speech. Okay. Also, when you talk about Gisakotomy, this is these stories, especially the Gisakotomy, reflect that just a little girl, right, who lost her families, and finally she can attain it to the Nibbana, the same state that achieved it by the Buddha, something like that. Okay, Gisakotomy finally achieved to the Arhat. It's not the the stream enterer, the once returner, but whatever she achieved is the highest stage of the noble individual. This is so much interesting to study. And also not only to individually achieve to that high stage, but some of the theories were appointed as the Tipiṭaka, by the Buddha himself. So such as Gisakotomy, right, was appointed as to be the foremost bhikkhunis in terms of Luka Pamana, right? Luka Pamana, to wear the very old, jivara, something like that. I think this is the top part of studying, those theories or even theras. Example, we can use this example to be, to be our guideline, yeah. To be some inspiration to achieve to the same state, that achieved it by those theories. Okay, there's a lot of interested theories. Yeah, I would like to finish with this. Kuchutra. This is also very interesting. I still remember that when I reading for my Pali examination. This watu, this watu is very huge, because Kuchutra, she is the servant. She is a servant of Samavati, right? Samavati is this big. There's a very long story, but the interesting part is that Kuchutra, she is a servant. Discriminated. Servant is some discriminated class of people, right? To be recognized as low grade according to the full caste system. So how can Kuchutra, a servant, with no values without social values, can achieve to the same liberation as well, because she was appointed by Samavati, right, to listen, to be a representative, to listen to the Dhammas of the Buddhas. And she's been doing this every single day. She went out to see the Buddha and listening to the Buddha, and after that she come back to give the Dhamma teachings to not only Samavati, the head of the female, right, but also to the all of those 500 female group. So finally everyone achieved to the Sodapan. I think this is very good start, good story, something like that. Okay, so my brief conclusion is that being any stereotypes of humans, being a woman, being a man, or different genders, different ages, is not the hindrance to achieve the Nibbana. Okay, thank you very much for your lecture.
Okay, so can I briefly comment? Thank you so much for your comments. I find them very insightful. So I think that many of those stories, especially the stories of Kuchutra, and the female servants that have achieved a lot, could be like very much an inspiration for us even nowadays, because we could see in those stories that they have so many obstacles to even like gain knowledge. The palace women that were taught by Gruszewska, they would not be able like to go and hear the Buddha's teaching. Like Gruszewska had to be the messenger, but still, even if they were not able like to go out from the palace, they still could hear the teaching, and they could still like gain knowledge, gain their achievement. Also, it means I think most of those stories would show, and maybe this is not particularly connected with scientific thinking, but that the Buddha's teaching is actually has this transforming effect on those people who were taught by him, and it would include like basically everyone, every person from every both men and women, and from every social class. So this is also like a very important message, because at the time of the Buddha, not only there was stereotype that women cannot really should not really get any education, and that they are not able to perform like intellectual inquiry, but also that men from the lowest strata of society would also be unable to profit from the teaching, or they would be even prohibited of hearing the sacred text of Brahmanism. And we also have many characters of men coming from the low social circles that would have like a great achievement. So, for example, Pali, who would be like the best expert in the Vinaya, right? Coming from a profession that would be considered from this Brahmanical point of view as very impure, and so he would be. So these impure professions would be performed by people like coming from like the lowest classes of society. So I think this is like this universal message that the Buddha's teaching is applicable to basically everyone. And I think it still could be an inspiration for us today, that whatever the struggles one have, it is possible to gain knowledge, to gain achievements from the teaching, like to benefit from the teaching. So with the right effort and with dedication, if it was possible for such characters as, for example, Tipiṭaka, who was, before she was a nun, she was a slave, then it is possible to basically everyone. I think like in ancient Indian society would be something like if even a woman from a low class can achieve something like this, is something very universal. And also, so this I think this also, apart from the this rational reasoning aspect, also this concept of Buddha's teaching as universal message that applies to all is also very strong in those examples. And also, I think some of the Western feminists sometimes are inspired by the Soma verses. So basically, they would interpret that discrimination in terms of against gender, that would be like the Maras. That would be what would Mara do. So they would frame it as such, and this is like a very strong message that discrimination is basically wrong, and we've got this in the Tipiṭaka. So I think it's very, very much important, and I think there can be like a lot of inspiration for modern society as well, from those examples, but also from other fragments of the Tipiṭaka. I would love to hear some more comments. Maybe you have different interpretations, or maybe you have heard of different examples. I could also think in my later work.
Okay, good morning, Professor. So thank you very much for your enlightened speech. So this is the first time I'm listening topic about the Theravada. So yeah, sure, I'm going back to room and I'll read the textbook whole. So, but yeah, through your presentation, I have a lot of questions, but maybe I'll just put in the two. So even you already mentioned the feminist. So the first question regarding this topic, Soma. So you mentioned Soma. So here he's talking about what does the womanhood matters. So nowadays in the society, so there are many confusions. What is the womanhood and manhood? I think recently in USA, one guy shoot by someone else. He's like trying to explain what is the manhood and womanhood. So this kind of notion. So what we can learn from these stories, or what we can share to the whole world, what is the womanhood from this story? This is my first question. And second question, also related to these stories, like women leaders or feminists. So how can we learn lesson from these stories to the whole world regarding the women leaders or regarding the feminists? How can they what they can learn from these stories? So how impact we can, from the Buddha's teaching, from the Theravada stories, how impact we can share or we can give to the modern women leaders, because in the society we need more women leaders. So that's why that's my two main question. So if I have more time, so I can share. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I think in terms of your first question, so there is this idea of that basically womanhood doesn't matter when it comes to those aspects of awakening, of the reasoning, of understanding the Dhamma. This could be interpreted, I think, in two ways. So one way is that Mara approaches Somateri like from this point of view of like some kind of challenge, an attack. So he always uses some negative stereotype, right? And the nun will challenge this stereotype and prove that this is basically wrong from the point of view of the Buddhist doctrine. So here, I think the first interpretation could be that she challenges not only Mara, but also like this idea that there is like some kind of essence. So that we could draw some, we could connect it with this aspect of anatta. So if there is no unchanging essence in anyone, then how can we talk about, that a woman or a man has like some definite characteristics? So that would be very much connected to the core of the Buddhist teaching. So in terms of awakening, the biological aspects are not important. But here also, like the second layer of this, I think, is that it's not the biology, right? Because this is probably like one aspect, because of course society in ancient India would understand gender like in a very simple matter, right? But also like on a symbolic level, I think it's more about like rejecting this notion of essentialism. And as you mentioned, that there are many conservative politicians even in the West that think that like women are defined as such, and there are some specific duties of women, and and the same goes for men. Like if someone does not fit in this kind of like definition, one would be discriminated against. And of course it causes a lot of suffering for people if we would lead our lives through such stereotypes, through such frameworks that are not that are without compassion. So I think so we can, that's the answer for my first question. And the answer for your second question, like what feminists can learn from such texts. So I think the Theravada had already been a great inspiration for feminists, and there's like the whole branch of like feminist-oriented research, of course, in the West. And when there are some when such research is made on Buddhist texts, the Therigatha will always be mentioned. Even if someone would research like the position of women in Vajrayana Buddhism, still someone would refer at the beginning that even in the earliest texts there are some examples of enlightened women, and some, at least like one example from the Therigatha would be mentioned. So for feminist scholarship, this idea of reconstructing the roles of women in religions, in society, is a very important task. But in many other religions, we do not have such texts, and one will have to look for cues in other texts, like if there are any female characters, or if someone is talking about maybe womanhood, and what can we draw, what conclusions can we draw from it. And Buddhism has this very unique text where it presents basically not only this universal idea of equality, but also achievements of the 73 eminent nuns that were authors of the poems of the Therigatha. So we've got a great material to look at the female voices from the past. And many of the Buddhist feminists in the West would learn a lot from those poems also, because they would look for inspiration. And in many other religions, we do not have such models, right, of like women who achieved a lot. So one could think of, for example, Somateri as some kind of example and inspiration. And I think it is very important for women also to have some model, of eminent women. So it would be somehow like easier to practice, easier to even imagine, right? Some kind of achievement. So this is basically, I think, like the main source of learning, that there are models of behavior one could be inspired by. And many of those poems also refer to struggles women have like in society. So not only Somateri was like discriminated against, but also many other Theris would mention that their choice was not understood, or they were not considered, fit for the life of a monastic by some other people. And I think for women who struggle with discrimination nowadays, this could also be some kind of inspiration that still, like all the hardship would not matter in the end, and that could serve as an inspiration both to practitioners and I think also to feminists and feminist scholars as well. Thank you so much.
Any more questions? Yeah, behind. Can you change the microphone?
Very thanks to you, Professor. We got some knowledge about the women in the Pali literature. My question is, do you have opportunity to study about the life of the female bhikkhus in the Therigatha? And because most of the story about the male bhikkhus are on record, but few stories about the male bhikkhus are on record. So do you feel like during the time of the Buddha, did women hold a significant role in the religious community? Yeah, what do you think, sir? Thank you, Professor.
Thank you so much. for your question. So, did women held significant position in the community? Oh, well, I think it depends, because as we know from the story from the Vinaya about the establishment of female monastic order, the monastic order of nuns would be very much would rely a lot of the support of the bhikkhus, and the bhikkhus would be the ones who would also like control the new ordinations, and those two communities were not like exactly equal, of course, in the modern sense, but of course, if we if we look at those communities as a separate communities, because we've got those four communities, 4 assemblies, right? Like in the mural here, that would be separate, but at least in the idea equal. There were many eminent Teris in the Bhikkhuni monastic community, and apart from that, they were authoring the verses of the Therigatha. We can also learn from both from the Therigatha commentarial literature, but also from the Vinaya, that many of those nuns were also had some role of leadership. So especially Patachara, but also Kisagotami. Also, the Therigatha mentions a poem where Buddha praises Upalavanna for being a great teacher to Subhakamaradhita. So it seems that within the community of nuns, there were many eminent nuns that would hold like high position, and also not only in terms of the achievement, spiritual achievement, but also in terms of being accomplished teachers, accomplished leaders. And it seems that, as the Mahaparinibbana Sutra I mentioned says, that the community of nuns was considered like a well-established, well-learned, and able to operate, to teach new members of themselves. So I think it was also like both Jainism and Buddhism opened this possibility of women to become monastics. It was very unique in those times, but also it opens opportunities for leadership, for education, for learning, also for being independent from the family they were coming from, so they could devote their whole lives to their spiritual quest. That was something that before Buddhism and Jainism was not possible. So also, I think women held very high positions within the order of nuns, and of course, the order of bhikkhus would be much more revered. That would have a higher position. But also, it seems from many examples that there were many accomplished nuns and even leaders, even in a modern sense. Thank you so much.
Yes. Well, Ajahn, actually lecture today is about women, so I want to hear more questions from female students. Any of you? Okay, there's a question.
Thank you, sir. Today I had happy to hear from you about the women, because of course we are women. That's why we need to appreciate our women community. Yes, I don't have a question, but I need to a little suggestion for you, from you, not for you. Yes, because since I became a nurse about 20 years ago, we usually learn from the Tamara about the women. Since I young societies, since I young nuns society, so we have a big nun society, but I don't see that much about the women in public and speak out and something like this. That's why how do we need to improve our knowledge or our gain insights in our inside knowledge. That's why I would like to suggest for you about this.
So can you if I understood you correctly, so you say that there should be more told about the roles of women in modern society.
Yes.
As well. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I think it's a very nice conclusion to this part of our meeting, that also the representatives of those who, like the descendants of those eminent women, are still present in the Buddhist community. So I hope that if there are ancient texts that could be inspiration for modern practitioners, for modern nuns. Also, I think on the level, or on the scholarly level, I hope that maybe some inspiration could be drawn for the community if some of you would maybe write a thesis on those texts, and that you would study those texts, for your own practice, but also maybe you will be able to communicate also this message as well. Thank you so much. Maybe last question.
Give me a chance to share just a very few minutes. It's just part of my dissertation about salient lay people who gain Sotapanna, and I got some information about Kuchutara, and she was the one who memorized the Buddha Dhamma, and that helps a lot in the following disciple in later generation, because what she memorized became part of our community, Buddhism community, to learn more Buddha Dhamma. In Tipiṭaka, in the book Thanisaro Bhikkhu, Jeffrey de Graaf, he translated. And Tipiṭaka, this was said by the Buddha, a translation with an introduction note by Thanisaro Bhikkhu. In Tipiṭaka, it is a collection. I read from introduction of the book. Tipiṭaka is a collection of 112 short discourses, takes its name from the statement at the beginning of each of its discourses. This iti was said, Uttang, by the Blessed One. The collection as a whole is attributed to a lay woman named Kuchutara, who worked in the palace of King Udena of Kosambi as a servant to one of his queens, Samavati. And Kuchutara went in her place and memorized. She was a servant of Samavati, right? And because the queen could not leave the palace to hear the Buddha discourses, and that's why Kuchutara went in her place, memorized what the Buddha said, and then returned to the palace to teach the queen and her 500 ladies in waiting. For her efforts, the Buddha cited Kuchutara as the foremost of his lay women disciples in terms of her learning. She was also an effective teacher when the inner apartments of the palace later burned down, killing the queen and her entourage. The Buddha commented in the Udana 7:10 that all of the women had reached at least the first stage of awakening. So all of them became noble ones. And this is by Kuchutara. And I just raised this point just as hope to be useful for somebody who study about women in Buddhism and or about Tipiṭaka, the Dharma of the teacher. Thank you very much indeed. Ka.
Thank you. I will just comment like two words. So thank you so much for mentioning this, because when it comes to the role of women in Buddhist literature, the Therigatha is very much mentioned, but Tipiṭaka has not gained so much attention from scholars. So that is also very important. So Krujuttara is maybe not the author of the suttas. She only, like remembered them, but also she was able like to teach them effectively and like to retain this text that later became part of the Tipiṭaka. It was recited also by Ananda during the first Sangiti, because when Krujuttara remembered the text, then she gave it to the nuns, and the nuns would then give it to the bhikkhus. So this is also a very important text, and it stresses that female agency also in preservation of the Buddhist teaching. So this is very important, and also I think this is a very inspiring character and could be inspiring for us today. And I translated Therigatha into Polish when I was working on my dissertation, but my next idea to translate something from Pali into Polish would be Tipiṭaka. So I already started working on it. And also, I think it should be mentioned more. And I'm very happy that you are writing such dissertation. I hope it will also enable us to learn some more about this character and this text. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Assistant Professor Dr. Joanna Gruszewska, for commenting all the questions, answering all the questions, and all the audiences who asked the questions. So now it's time for lunch, so we would not take much more time than this. But we still have the afternoon session, so please be back by maybe 12:45 or 12:50. So around 1 p.m. we will start the afternoon discussion. You'll be hearing Ajahn Joanna and Ajahn Sanu once again in the afternoon session before we move ahead to our students' paper presentation. So thank you very much for the morning session, and we'll see you again. Thank you.